When looking back in retrospect, it seems the weird experiments and long-running video game franchises seem to only grow in appreciation as time goes by. Your Super Mario Sunshine, Zelda Wind Wakers. It seems in this cynical day and age, all the beloved IPs of the past have become stale and lost touch of their original purpose. Perhaps it makes sense to praise the work of art for being truly original and boundary pushing, sometimes regardless of its own actual quality. Games that seem to have no reason to be so different seem to lead their own niche cult following for not being afraid to be what they wanted to be, regardless of the negative reception that would follow. And no franchise can call more divisive games to their name than Sonic the Hedgehog, even as far back as his inception. Today, we'll be taking a look at possibly the most divisive adventure in his catalogue, Sonic the Hedgehog CD, released for the Sega CD add-on for the Sega Genesis in 1993. First things first, before we delve into the gameplay, I can't not start with the intro animation. You know how everyone and their mum will tell you that Sonic Unleashed opening is God's greatest gift to mankind? And they'd be right, but in my opinion, Sonic CD's intro is just as incredible. This beautiful hand-drawn animation by Toei Animation Studios is absolutely gorgeous. Just seeing Sonic being cool as hell tells you all the story you need to know without any words necessary. This is Sonic the Hedgehog in his purest form, fast and cool as hell. Sonic CD would be the introduction for a very crucial long-running series tradition, our unique vocal theme. With Sonic CD having two different soundtracks, Japanese and US, more on that later, this means two different vocal themes for the intro and outro animations. For the Japanese soundtrack you get You Can Do Anything. I'm not a big fan of this track. It's just far too cheesy on the cheese scale for me. I mean, it's literally called You Can Do Anything. Very on the nose. On the other hand, for the US soundtrack you get Sonic Boom, which I definitely prefer. In terms of Sonic themes, this one is probably on the weaker side. But hey, that's definitely no criticism towards it. It's still a great listen. In your first steps in Palmtree Panic, you'll notice that things seem a little different this time around. It's very blocky and maze-like. You'll probably be very confused as this isn't what you'd expect from a classic Sonic game. You see, Sonic the Hedgehog built a very impressive and unique foundation for a momentum-based platformer. Sonic could use the level geometry to his advantage. Slopes and loop-de-loops could be manipulated to gain some unheard of speed that automatically made Sonic stand out from the crowd of mascot platformers. Then Sonic 2 comes along and says, yeah, that was cool and all, but what if we got way faster? The spin dash was introduced to make up for these sections Sonic 1, where if you hadn't built up enough speed beforehand, you'd have to go back, repeat it, then get back to playing the video game. Now Sonic has an ability that gives him an instant burst of speed. Not only that, but the game was just much faster than before. Slow and boring zones were given the boot mostly, and speed was clearly a much bigger focus than before, even in just the level design. Compare the opening of Green Hill and Chemical Plant for the best example. However, Sonic CD strives in the complete opposite direction. Exploration. You'll notice these past and future signs plastered everywhere. What are these MacGuffins, you ask? Well, dear viewer, these act as time machines. Once you pass them, then generate enough speed for a certain amount of time, boom, you are in a completely different time zone, either the past or the future. You see, the story this time around is Dr. Eggman has taken over Little Planet and has infiltrated the various zones of his army of evil and goofy robots. So traveling back to the past and finding and destroying the robot generators creates a good future, which you can then see if you travel back to the present and then the future, accompanied by a very lovely track that makes you feel happy and accomplished for your efforts. Alternatively, you could instead decide to travel to the future, the bad future where the robot generator was never destroyed and therefore the world has become sinister and lost its color and life, with no organic life forms to be found. This time accompanied by an ominous track fitting to the destroyed reality you chose. So yeah, that means 4 versions of each act. The past, the present, the good future, and the bad future. Each with their own unique remix fitting to their time period and vibe. So each level and act is about finding the best spot to efficiently time travel, rather than a playground of multiple paths that incentivizes speed or exploration, depending on the user's playstyle. Traveling to the past and destroying all the robot generators in each act across the 7 zones will create a good future, even if you don't travel forward in time to actually see the good future you created, which is nice, especially the further in the game you get, rewarding you with the good ending, just like in Sonic 1. Alternatively, also like Sonic 1, reaching the end of Acts 1 and 2 with 50 rings will send you to a special stage to nab one of the 7 time stones, not Chaos Emeralds. I guess the time travel plot called for more shiny trinkets to add to Sonic's deep pockets. Collecting all of these will also reward you with the good ending. Despite there being 7 instead of 6, there is no super form of sorts. Pretty lame, but hey, it's cool that the game provides you with 2 unique ways of obtaining the good ending. I would say going for the good ending is a lot more worth it in my opinion. Basically a requirement, as if you decide to not engage with the time travel mechanic and therefore decide not to explore the past of each act and find and eliminate each robot generator, you are left with a pretty hollow experience. The levels just become a mess of random geometry that seems like it was made in Super Mario Maker by a 6-year-old. Sure, you could obtain the good ending through beating all 7 special stages, but I feel that is just as hollow as you are still just going from left to right. Personally, I'm not someone who needs an incentive to explore. I enjoy it, even in Sonic 2 where it takes a back seat. In CD, these levels are clearly built with an expectation that you engage with the time travel gimmick. So if you do decide to just go from left to right like how you would the previous 2 games, yeah, it becomes a pretty lackluster experience, which I feel is a pretty big contributor to this game's lack of high praise, at least compared to its contemporaries. Sure, it certainly isn't a 06 or even an Unleashed, but whenever the discussion of classic Sonic arises, CD is definitely pushed to the wayside, and I feel that is mostly because it's just so different from the others. It asks you to approach it much differently than the others, and because of that, it's bound to turn off a lot of people. Some people just can't accept such a radical shift in gameplay. No doubt a theme that would plague this franchise, even to this very day. Palmtree Panic does a pretty dang good job introducing this unique gameplay to the player. While the glassy plains may be familiar, this certainly isn't a copy and paste job of Green Hill. While Emerald Hill took Green Hill and flattened it to mainstream the focus on high speed, Palmtree Panic swaps forward momentum with increased verticality. Like 3 seconds in, you just get chucked up into the sky. Look at that totally radical 3D. Being the intro, it definitely makes a concerned effort to ease you into the time travel mechanic. There's tons of open room to gain speed with pretty minimal random garbage. It is here you'll become accustomed to Sonic's brand new move, the Super Peel Out. Just like the Spin Dash, it gives an instant burst of speed, but unlike the Spin Dash, you are completely vulnerable at all times. Now, this sounds like one dud of an ability, but that's where you are wrong. Not just because you can simply roll afterwards to avoid the vulnerable at all times issue, but the Super Peel Out generates a much greater speed than the Spin Dash, especially on flat ground. This is where it becomes the more useful ability of the two when time traveling. Like I said, time traveling isn't necessarily about going as fast as possible, more maintaining a constant rate of speed. So if you find a hazard-free area that seems long enough to work, the Super Peel Out will make time traveling easier with its quick burst of speed, most useful on flat terrain. It quickly becomes the go-to move for all methods of time travel, as it simply generates a faster speed than the Spin Dash and takes less time and space to do so, as the Spin Dash requires slopes and loops to see high speeds. It is here where you'll come across one of two brand new characters introduced, Amy Rose, a girl who is irrationally in love with Sonic. My guy, you probably need a restraining order. That does not look consensual. Since this is still a classic Sonic game, that's about as far as her character goes. She follows you to Collision Chaos, where she is then kidnapped by the other new character. What a clever segue that was. Metal Sonic. While Amy was a typical love interest, Metal Sonic's role is to act as a perfect rival for Sonic, as not only are his abilities able to match Sonic, but his existence makes perfect sense with the nature versus machines conflict that Sonic 1 had built up, as Sonic was an animal trying to put an end to the evil Dr. Eggman and his machines. Now in CD, Eggman has created a robot replica of Sonic designed to match him in everything that makes him special. Metal Sonic even manages to keep Amy hostage all the way up to Stardust Speedway. So even though he goes down pretty easily, his impact is made real as early as his very first introduction. Once you beat Act 2, you'll notice something horrifying. The 3-act structure from Sonic 1 makes its grand return. Now, this sounds like an issue on paper. I mean, I outlined before in how I think a 3-act structure ultimately damaged the pacing of Sonic 1, as it dragged out each zone. Looks especially bad in retrospect, as it's the only game to use a 3-act structure. But here in Sonic CD, even though there are 3 acts, the 3rd act is merely just a mini boss arena, like you'd see in the modern Kirby games. I honestly don't know why they bothered with a 3rd act when all it houses is an incredibly brief gameplay section before the boss. You could just add the boss to Act 2 and absolutely nothing would change. Also, just like in Sonic 1, there is no special stages entry points for each 3rd act, which acts as another beautiful segue to talk about the CD special stages. I do not like these very much, for one main reason. The UFOs can just decide to randomly juke you the hell out, with 0 warning, 0 animation, and 0 build up. It never fails to drive me up the wrong tree and make me question my life choices. A shame too, because this is really the only issue I have with these. The 3D perspective is pretty cool and a nice improvement, as the Sonic 1 special stages were way too goddamn zoomed in. And the half pipe had a pretty janky perspective that wasn't afraid to blindside you in a pretty unfair manner. Here in CD, you can see everything at all times, which is definitely an improvement. But man, can the perspective be confusing as hell when trying to land on some of these UFOs. It just feels like a gamble if you land it or not, and that is never a good sign. With the extremely limited movement of just moving and jumping, it becomes such a chore of just running around like a damn fool just to nab one of these UFOs. Because of how fast and unpredictable their movement pattern becomes. Just like in Sonic 1, sometimes it just feels like luck if you end up with a shiny stone or a severe mental breakdown. The one saving grace for these special stages is that in the middle of each there is a blue UFO which will give you an extra 30 seconds And it respawns too. But even then, that's just such a band-aid solution for how frustrating the gameplay can be sometimes. Thank God for mods. Overall, I'd say these are right in the middle in my long-awaited special stage ranking. Better than this, but worse than these. Well, it's that time of the week to gush about a Sonic the Hedgehog soundtrack. I've already sung the praises of Sonic Boom, but there is plenty of bopping tunes to be found, let me tell ya. The present themes, being the main theme of each zone, are usually pretty banger worthy. While in the past, the music takes on a more quiet tone, making the player think about the world and state. Then traveling to the good future, where the music makes you feel all nice and happy for saving the animals from Eggman's evil clutches. On the flip side, the bad future tracks are creepy and foreboding, fitting to the post-apocalyptic type vibe the zone embodies, with all the colour and life being sucked out. That is, of course, with one major exception, with one of the most iconic tracks in the entire franchise. Remember much earlier when I said that Sonic CD had the rare distinction of having two separate soundtracks? Well, the tracks I've been talking about so far have been from the Japanese soundtrack, but Sega of America wanted to have a different soundtrack for quote-unquote wanting something a little bit more musically rich and complex. For what it's worth, they did turn out some pretty dang quality tracks. Personally, I see the Japanese soundtrack as the main soundtrack, as the US soundtrack isn't completely original, as it reuses the past themes for some odd reason, and it hasn't been re-released digitally at all. So it seems like Sega just don't care for it anymore. Despite that, I think some of the US tracks are just flat out better than their Japanese counterparts. Wacky Workbench is such a vibe, and I feel Stardust Speedway is much more fitting and just a better track overall. Like, yeah, there are bright lights everywhere, but it feels quiet to me, like a city high in the sky. I don't know, I can't really describe it, but I feel a more chill track suits it better. Speaking of a music piece suiting a theme, Metallic Madness's US counterpart feels a lot more suitable for a final zone. It's eerie and mysterious in all the right ways. Heavily underrated in my opinion. Moving on, the next three zones that follow, Collision Chaos, Tidal Tempest, and Quartz Quadrant, are all pretty simple and straightforward, carrying over the gameplay loop we've discussed. Find the past time portal, discover the most efficient place to time travel, and once in the past, explore to find the robot generator and destroy it to create the good future, usually introducing some sort of gimmick to make each zone stand out. Like Collision Chaos being the mandatory pinball stage with all the sorts of bumpers and springs everywhere, and the worst thing to happen to me since my sleep schedule. Tidal Tempest being the mandatory water level, but since time travel is only possible on land, and both generators are also on land, so you won't be in the water for very long if you don't want to be. And Quartz Quadrant introducing these runways that flip direction when you pass a sign. Other than that, it's a pretty standard level. If you do decide to travel to the past and the real meat and potatoes of the gameplay presents itself, here is where you'll find the robot generators. If you can find them and eliminate them, then you create a good future. If you can't find them, then the future becomes unchanged, remaining in an unsettling dystopia. Here is where you'll find out if you actually enjoy Sonic CD. If you are like me and enjoy exploring and find a great level of satisfaction and accomplishment from finding those generators, then you'll probably enjoy Sonic CD. However, if you don't like the idea and think it's just boring and confusing, then this game is definitely not for you. And that's the simple hard truth about Sonic CD. Believe me, spending so much time in these dang zones can feel like such a chore sometimes. You'll question if you even like the game at all. But when you finally find it, that feeling of accomplishment makes it all worth it for me. Mainly because rarely are the generators placed in some outrageous spot where you wonder how the developers thought anyone was gonna figure that out without a guide. Really, the only one I have a problem with is Collision Chaos Act 1. Instead of rolling down this slope like you have been for literally every Sonic slope ever, you are instead supposed to jump to reach this platform. Yeah, that one felt pretty cheap. When searching for the generators, I found the best course of action is to focus on verticality. Like I said, CD sees a focus on vertical platforming in its level design, so reaching a high point is very helpful. That's usually where you'll find the generators. Overall, I would say that finding these generators is usually a fun time. It makes you think about the level design in a way that the series hadn't seen before, and I think that deserves some praise. Sure, sometimes you just end up spending like 10 minutes looking for one and it can be really frustrating and discouraging to feel like you're just wasting time going in circles. That's just the two-sided coin of CD's level design. It could just come down to luck as the generators could be anywhere. So what is saying you should go this way instead of that way? This is a game that definitely becomes more enjoyable on repeat playthroughs. As objective as I try to be, everyone's playthrough is going to be different. Some generators I found easy, you might find hard, and vice versa. This isn't my first playthrough, so I can't judge it as so. My memory will play a factor in my gameplay as I get more familiar with each generator placement on every playthrough. But if I find the generator placement is bad, I'm gonna say it as such. Just because I know where it is doesn't take away the problems I have with it. I don't know if this is necessarily a hot take or not, but I believe Wacky Workbench is the absolute worst zone in classic Sonic history. Sure, Labyrinth is pretty damn bad, being a slow, monotonous water level, but at least it was functional and easy to understand. On the other hand, Wacky Workbench has got to have one of the most irritating gimmicks I've ever had the displeasure to witness. The floor is bouncy. Sounds like great fun, don't it? Once you touch the floor, you get bounced up all the way up to the ceiling, with tons of frustrating hazards, turning the level into a frustrating slog just to get back to where you started, then just to get bounced all the way back up, and repeat. Boom, my day is ruined. If you thought the floor as lava was bad, imagine the floor being a trampoline. God, and I haven't brought up time travel yet. Because of the unorthodox as hell layout, you may be confused on how you can time travel in this mess of a zone. Building up any speed at all is basically impossible. Well, you have to track down these pipes, which can easily give you the speed you need. But if you didn't know this, and it's not like they stand out that much, Wacky Workbench will be the chore to end all chores for you. This is the kind of thing I was talking about before. On repeat playthroughs, when you know the best spots, you could beat Wacky Workbench in like 5 minutes flat. On your first playthrough, when you most likely won't think to do so, it's a recipe for creating one of the worst zones this franchise has ever conceived. That's not even mentioning the outrageous locations of these robot generators. Act 1's location has to be the absolute dumbest spot imaginable. Expect you to willingly get crushed, which would kill you in any other scenario. For this one oddly specific chance, it takes you to the generator. Now, I shouldn't have to explain why that is extremely stupid and just plain nonsensical level design. 2 has the goal to shove it at the very beginning of the level. And it's not even hard to reach at all. You just bounce up and boom, generator down. I can't even be mad at the sheer laziness. It's honestly just so damn funny. They didn't even try. So yeah, Wacky Workbench is either done in 5 minutes with you barely playing the level at all, or you spend minutes on end in this hellhole of a trampoline park. On paper, Stardust Speedway seems like a recipe for a great zone. The closest CD has to a normal Sonic zone. Loops, tons of speed, and bizarre level design kept to a minimum. It seems like we have an absolute winner on our hands, doesn't it? Well, that's where it gets complicated, as I feel Stardust Speedway would probably be the best zone in any other Sonic game, but it just does not fit for Sonic CD. In a game all about exploration, deciphering the best spots to efficiently time travel, that formula breaks when put into a zone that almost forgets exploration entirely. Time travel is the easiest it has ever been. Because of all the added loops, it's basically impossible to not time travel on your first try. Now, that may not sound like a bad thing to you. Maybe you like time traveling stress-free. But for me, finding those spots designed for time travel use was incredibly rewarding. So taking that away does strip the main appeal of CD's level design away from me. This clashing of level designs just does not work in my opinion. Not helped by the fact that both generators are incredibly easy to find, taking away all satisfaction that came from discovering where they were hidden that was present all of the previous zones. Act 2 is where I felt I had the least amount of fun in my playthrough, because with the high speed focus of the zone, trying to find the time travel pose became such a chore. As with all the bright lights and colors, I found myself constantly being lost, as I couldn't figure out where I had and I hadn't been. It's quite ironic that the zone that feels the most like a traditional Sonic zone is also the zone that I found myself getting lost in the most. Not helped by the fact that in the good time travel spot, they put a future portal at just the right moment, so I would be sent into the bad future instead of the past. Like, that had to be intentional. If this was any other Sonic game, then most likely Stardust Speedway would have been an instant favorite of mine. But here in Sonic CD, I believe it simply does not work for the exploration focused structure. It feels out of place. If you were just trying to go from left to right, then I'm sure it would be a blast. But as we've established, that would lead to an incredibly unfulfilling experience because of the radically different level design that CD is known for. Fair to say, this zone would fit a whole lot better in Sonic Mania. We've finally reached the final zone of the game, Metallic Madness. In terms of being a successor to Metropolis Zone, it is definitely carrying a whole lot less baggage. Sure, it has some kinda annoying enemies, but I'm a lot more willing to let this go because they aren't accompanied by frustrating level design. Usually. Trading annoying garbage with a more boxed in approach with dangerous swords and tricky timed obstacles. Fitting for a final level in Eggman's home turf. If I had to rag on something, I would say I don't like how Act 2's robot generator placement is once again chucked near the very beginning of the act, so you'll most likely spend ages exploring in what is quite a lengthy act for nothing, because it hasn't crossed your mind that the generator would be in one of the last places you would think to try. Just like in Wacky Workbench Act 2, it feels lazy, but I feel it is way worse in this scenario because you would have no clue of its location, unlike there, where it would be basically impossible to miss. Especially because Metallic Madness is structured to be quite segmented, so backtracking to the beginning, a task that is likely because you'll most likely be at least near the middle of the level after time traveling, can be quite confusing as to how to get back and raise the question in your head if that would even be a possibility in the first place. Other than that, Metallic Madness is pretty straightforward and easy to understand. Definitely a step in the right direction compared to what came before it. Act 3 was an unwelcome spike in difficulty. For the first time in this franchise, timed obstacles are placed above a bottomless pit, so it is a very egregious beginner's trap that ate up a good portion of my lives on my first playthrough. And this completely off-screen wall of spikes will be sure to surprise you. Another cheap obstacle that is completely off-screen with zero warning indicated to the player to justify its placement. Then, after turning off the lights, the final showdown with Eggman awaits. With the Doctor piloting the fan-dubbed Egg Spinner. Unfortunately, this fight sees one big change that immediately kills all tension the fight could have possessed. In Sonic 1 and 2, all your rings were taken away from you for the final boss. This change makes sense, as with rings, there would be no punishment for just mindlessly jumping into the boss without a care in the world for danger. However, here in Sonic CD, your rings are not taken away from you for the final encounter. Therefore, that fear of an instant death has completely vanished. Though, even considering that, I don't think simply taking away the player's rings would be an instant fix. I cannot seem to figure out how to land that first hit on Eggman without taking a hit myself. After that, the boss becomes no harder than any other fight in the game. Losing that tension that made finally conquering the Death Egg robot so satisfying. So, for that reason, I have to see the Egg Spinner as a definitive downgrade compared to the Death Egg robot. While it doesn't have the wonky hitbox a Death Egg robot is infamous for, at least in that fight, it was clear when was a safe chance to attack. It was a risk versus reward mind game that you had to weigh in your head at all times. So by taking away the risk, there is no reward, sucking away any sense of achievement that gave Sonic 2's ending such a climactic feel, and I feel that's a real shame. It seems Sonic Team went in the complete opposite direction following the Death Egg robot, a direction I feel it was a mistake for the reasons I've outlined. After that blunder, we are treated with another gorgeous animation courtesy of Toei Animation Studios that sees Sonic carry Amy back home to safety. I guess she just followed Sonic after Stardust Speedway. Now, if you got the bad ending, aka either didn't destroy all the generators or didn't collect all of the 7 time stones, Eggman is able to escape with 1 time stone in hand, but lucky Sonic is able to snipe him out of the air. Then, we are greeted with just a whole treasure trove of just Sonic being so dang cool. Like, look at that smirk, man. And he just rips off the sword like it's nothing. What can't this man do? If you did obtain the good ending, no such cutscene plays out. Instead, you are greeted with this lovely animated gif of flowers and some text, with a lovely jingle to boot, just to let you know how cool you are for saving Little Planet. So charming. So, for me, Sonic CD sits in a very complicated place. I definitely see the appeal, and I have come around to enjoy its unique quirks. The atmosphere and charm is unmatched and is what I believe gives Sonic CD the fanbase it still has. The haunting vibes of the bad futures. The comforting aesthetic of the good futures. The abstract zone themes. A soundtrack that nails so many different themes and emotions. Exploring the past of these zones to change the future is such an awesome concept that it's truly a shame that this mechanic hasn't been brought back to this very day. All of this gives Sonic CD its uniqueness that keeps it from getting lost to time. While it certainly isn't without issues, some robot generator placements are just counterproductive to the gameplay philosophy. Wacky Workbench sounds like an interesting idea but suffers from awful execution, and I find Stardust Speedway simply does not fit for the more exploration focused level design. But I have a newfound appreciation for just how different CD feels. Through its gameplay, music, atmosphere, telling a story just from you exploring the zones, that I can definitely call myself a fan. While I don't replay it nearly as often as the other games of its era, I've come to respect and understand why Sonic CD still leads a niche community of fans that I can proudly say I now belong to. That will do it for everything I have to say for Sonic CD. Believe me, I was shocked by just how much I had to say about this game. But hey, what are you gonna do? As always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope I see you next time. Till then, take care and have a lovely day.